criteria did you use for grouping diverse vocabulary for your research?
First of all, it is a criteria of frequency because we extracted keywords, and the criteria of frequency, it is ground criteria for linguistic researchers which are connected with computer processing of data. First of all, it is frequency. So we had the words which had low frequency, and we had words which were very frequent in our research.
So can we say that the grouping was done both by automated analysis plus manual, or it was just automated analysis? So I mean regarding to grouping.
Well, partly it was automatic and partly it was manual. It was automatic because we extracted the most frequent words and then we had to group it. But it was a problem to group the words into categories because, as we know, one word can belong to different categories at the same time. And in the case when we had to decide to what group we had to add the word, we did it manually. But we extracted the words automatically. We made the list of words automatically. It was a corpus, and we had automatic comparison with British National Corpus. So we had two lists of British National Corpus and the list of words we extracted from the newspapers.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I invite Solomiia Albota. So the next, Oksana, Marchuk, Ivan Bekhta, and Nataliya Bondarchuk. Statistical particulars of the lexical-thematic group evil in John Rowling's Harry Potter. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just a minute. Honorable participants of the conference, let me introduce the obtained result of the study, Statistical Particulars of the Lexical-Thematic Group Evil in the John Rowling's Harry Potter, carried out with a group of scholars, Oksana, Ivan Bekhta, and Nataliya Bondarchuk. The totality of our research. So the problem of interpreting lexical-semantic space of the English fantasy text fundamentally correlates with the word's meaning. And using modern statistical approaches, lexical-semantic units rendering a plate of negative emotions have been found to be reinterpreted figuratively through the prism of images. The effectiveness of the statistical particulars were proved. So the purpose of this article is to create a framework of the lexical-semantic group evil that is done for the first time on the material of modern English, that is textual complex of novels by John Rowling. And the next thing that we did was to describe a versatile and multidimensional verbalization and actualization of lexical units of the lexical-semantic group on the three narrative levels, and they are anthropomorphic world, floromorphic world, and zoomorphic world. According to our research, the fantasy text is a technique of a hybrid writing which has created a dual structure on the background of myth and also scale, so with the semantic choices and section forms of exploitation of various worlds created by the author-writer. The primary world and the secondary world. The lexical-semantic structure of the hybrid fantasy world is a simultaneous realization of the concept of good and evil. The key component to every English fantasy narrative story is a conflict that John Rowling portrays in different ways perfectly. And we distinguish three main conflicts. The first one is the internal conflict that the characters experience in the sequel. The next one is a small conflict that unfolds between the characters in the sequel. and the last one is a great conflict in which the characters are confronted by an outside force. All of these conflicts are certainly important, but the most significant is the central conflict within the English fantasy text, the struggle between good, that is represented by boy wizard Harry, and evil, that is represented by Lord Voldemort. So the presence of evil in the Harry Potter sequel is undeniable, and therefore the next task to be solved is to perform lexical-semantic classification of the lexical-semantic group evil in the English fantasy text Harry Potter. So by lexical-semantic group, we mean a group of words united on the basis of the presence of the common semantic component in the semantic structure of these words. So the procedure for conducting componential analysis may be as follows. The first one is analysis of the dictionary definition of the lexeme and the context in order to realize the lexical-semantical variant. And next one is combining lexemes whose semantic structure has an invariant corresponding to the subject property into the lexical-semantic group. So according to that, the synonymous range of the lexeme evil in its various meanings include such lexical units as weak, bad, wrong, harmful, demonic, offensive, sin, violent, wrong, black-hearted, corrupt, sincere, and others. And all they are substantive and non-derivative lexeme units of the lexical-semantic group evil. Also, numerous are the negative emotions which receive imaginative reframing through the prism of images. And so you can see all the list of those emotions and their quantity on the slide. Each of the emotions is expressed by a number of synonymous range of nouns, adjectives, adverbs, verbs, and participles. Most of the verbs in the selected constellized fragments are related to the shouting. Most often the verbs are combined with nouns, adjectives, and participles, reinforcing their emotional coloring. For example, a horrible squealing yell was yelling so loudly. So the main characters in Potteriana's magical world are screaming with fear and rage. Componential analysis of the semantics of lexical units to denote evil in the English fantasy text Harry Potter showed that this concept is realized on three narrative levels, and they are anthropomorphic, zoomorphic, and floromorphic. So therefore, the concept of evil is examined in the functional lexical semantic triad of the textual pattern of the fantasy text. And here you can see anthropomorphic world where the evil done by humans, zoomorphic world where the evil done by animals, and floromorphic world where the evil done by plants. In total, 351 lexical units containing negative evaluation in their semantics were enrolled in the lexical semantic group evil. By the number of units, the most numerous is lexical semantic group anthropomorphic world, which include 173 lexical units. And this phenomenon is explained that by fact that the main activators of negative atmosphere and emotions are humans. The next in number of the lexical units is lexical semantic group zoomorphic world, which include 112 lexical units. And the least numerous is lexical semantic group floromorphic world, which includes 66 lexical units. So the structure of the lexical semantic group evil in the English fantasy text Harry Potter is represented by such a lexical semantic group as character traits, appearance, relationship, magic activity, and color. And a human being occupies the most important and central place in the fantasy world picture. Within the proposed model and of the scientific description, all aspects of categorization of the lexical semantic group evil have been explained in the term of textual properties and statistical particulars, properties of conscience, intention, and perception, which are cognitive operations imposed on the textual structure or on the occasion of use. Lexical meaning described in the research are dynamic and sensitive to contextual demands rather than text and style. The study of the lexical-semantic structure of the fantasy text is related to the words and its functioning in the text of the sequel. So their perspective is recognized in proceeding with the comparison of verbalization and actualization of the lexical structure, taking into account gender traits, in particular in comparative studies of the lexical structure of the English fantasy text of different authors. So thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much for the interesting presentation. Well, dear colleagues, you are invited to ask questions, to engage into discussion with the speakers, well, with the presenters. Well, then I have the question. So you analyze lexico-semantic groups. Well, you consider so using more advanced terminology and more advanced paradigm of cognitive linguistics for such research, well, and try to disclose the conceptual nature of evil in these works.
Thank you so much for your question. In our next research, we will consider this issue and take into account, and maybe we will try to reveal and to explain the hidden and deep nature of the evil in the fantasy text. And we will take into account, maybe we will analyze different forces, not just John and Rowling.
Okay, thank you. I invite Solomiia Albota to present the results of the research under the title Modeling the Impact of the Pandemic on Online Communication, Textual Semantic Analysis.
Oh, hello, dear participants. Here's presentation to my paper, Modeling the Impact of the Pandemic on Online Communication, Textual Semantic Analysis. And the most viral priority refers to social communication via a variety of social media, especially under such tough social isolation pandemic conditions. Current lockdown situation differs from the previous one. Today, there are lots of technological facilities helping us to interact and be involved into the very heart of social services. The frequent usage of digital technologies during pandemic may have a tendency to nurture users' social support. The latter may moderate the impact of social separation and distance. So the purpose of this study is to introduce the modeling structure of pandemic-affected communication on the basis of such social media as Reddit by semantically analyzing online statements within discussion codes, allocating among them those ones referring to the semantic pandemic-oriented groups ranging from being the most to the least common, and the linguistic interpretation comparison within these semantic groups and statistic data are followed. So, in agreement with the transparent susceptibility model, humans tend to gain apprehension, shaping anticipation statements concerning the contiguity of menace as well as its distinguished motion. Being subject to negativism, users may no longer productively evolve the statements under discussion, leading the latter to a standstill or endless illiteracy communicative loop. Common internet awareness is initiated by the impetus of composite interconnections amidst users allocating ordinary objects and handled with regard to a global agreement and support. It is worth mentioning that online platforms, the one that is under investigation, Reddit, tend to be effective not only concerning binding users, similarly in terms of strengthening the mitigating reaction. What effects digital communication in such social platforms is the impact of COVID-19. Concerning the opinion, perspectives of online communicative tools and cognitive processes are the basis for the fundamentals of modeling the current pandemic-affected digital communication, the usage of textual semantic analysis. Pandemic has been observed to be, first of all, a mental concept, which will be further analyzed by textual semantics. The research principle considered in the paper is in statistic finding the most commented posts concerning pandemic, which are marked by up votes, and those with the least commented section. Such differentiation allows to further interpret similar as well as opposite semantic groups within the post and statistic data. Here, conducting textual semantic analysis of the commented post statements, the following semantic groups are allocated. Having allocated 150 textual fragments represented in the form of a commented post statements within the Reddit social media, it must be stated that explicit linguistic markers of identifying emotional negative statements tone prevail. It is substantiated by the fact that communication under the Reddit discussion thread pandemic is obviously a thorny issue, and all the statements commented to a more or less extent relate to general desperate emotional situation or speculations over it in an open way. Figure 3, resembling the same semantic groups which have been manually and interpretatively allocated and commented and proved by such software as LIWC. The following step of the linguistic analysis in the paper was to perform the same procedure mentioned above, but this time interpretation changed according to the least commented pandemic Reddit posts. So in our case, the process of textual and semantic analysis of the commented post statements encompasses the following semantic groups. Well, they are the same semantic groups referring to the previous most commented statements. Even exemplified material seems to illustrate similar moods and willingness of users, thus creating a dominance of negative tone statements over the positive ones. In figure 5, what is surprising here is that unlike previous, the most commented pandemic posts, personal factor is within the average indicating groups. So here's 3.54 points, whereas social words prevail, that average one, 6.97 points. It may be interpreted in a way that this time, within the least commented pandemic post, there are statements which constitute general information concerning pandemic situation. The first Reddit commented post in the first I word of this LIWC software prevails over the second one, as the title of the first one embodies users' pandemic stories, whereas the second one illustrates common truth worldwide. The second one is similar but full of emotional concern and user psychological support. Having contrasted and compared semantic analysis outcomes in an interpretative and statistic way, the modeling representation of the Reddit pandemic affected online communication posts is introduced. So the concept of pandemic and its influence on digital communication was discovered by conducting textual and semantic analysis towards the Reddit commented post. It was examined that allocated semantic groups within both Reddit posts were the same in form, outwards, but different in sense, inward. Such cognitive mechanisms followed by mental states as fear, angst, anxiety, and stress were established. Social support patterns were identified and interpreted according to the allocated and analyzed semantic groups of the Reddit pandemic affected digital communication post. Thank you for your attention.
Oh, thank you, Solomiia. Pavlo Radjuk, I think so. Have the question to the speaker?
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question. What method did you use to extract features from the text, and what features did you use in this study?
Thank you for your question. Actually, I use that software, Linguistic Inquiry and Counting Words. So it helped to distinguish such semantic groups as positive statement tone, negative statement tone, statements concerning cognitive processes, alert statements, and statements with a degree of moralization. So actually, I used such program and it proved my manual results while I was allocating these statements from discussion posts in Reddit.
Got it, thank you. And did you apply any additional normalization techniques to normalize the text, to normalize the data?
Actually, no, it was mainly interpretative.
Got it, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the question. Well, and we proceed with this speech of Nataliya Lototska, Statistical Characteristics of Roman Ivanychuk's Idiolect based on writer's text corpus. Nataliya, you are given the floor.
Okay, good afternoon, dear participants. I am Nataliya Lototska, PhD, a lecturer at the State University of Life Safety. Just a second, I can share my screen. Do you see my presentation?
Not yet, but well, now we'll have it.
Well.
Okay. Just a second. Okay. I would like to present you my study named Statistical Characteristic of Roman Ivanychuk's Idiolect based on writer's text corpus. The paper presents the statistical study of Roman Ivanychuk historical novels. His Idiolect hasn't been the subject of linguistic and statistical research yet. The analysis of author's text and its lexicon reflects the individuality of linguistic preference. The text is the basis for the Idiolect study as well. The author's lexicon reflects the Idiolect more specifically. The use of corpus-based approach and the application of statistical methods allow to find some of his distinctive markers of writing manner. The statistical approach demonstrates the richness of the lexicon of linguistic personality, allows to identify quantitative markers of the author's idiolect, and give them qualitative interpretation. Statistical approaches may reveal characteristics which differ them one from the others, and therefore present individual creative manner of a writer. The subject of the research is the statistical characteristics of Roman Ivanychuk's historical text. To accomplish integrated study for Roman Ivanychuk, the corpus of his prose fiction text has been created. This corpus comprises 16 historical novels and one historical trilogy written throughout 1962-2016. Total corpus size in 1,295 words. To carry out integrated research of the author idiolect, the subcorpus of Ukrainian prose fiction was created in the graph by applying filters like style fiction, original language Ukrainian, and definite time span. Total corpus size in Ukrainian prose fiction is 76 million, over 76 million words. Frequency of parts of speech, vocabulary ranking, morphological and statistical indicators for vocabulary, statistical characteristic of the vocabulary and text displays frequency patterns of the idiolect. The study of the parts of speech frequency in the text is essential for revealing individual writers' characteristics. To present the statistical characteristic of nouns, adjectives, verbs, adverbs, preposition in Ivanychuk's text, simple queries are used. The relative frequency of the mentioned part of speech in Ivanychuk's subcorpus have been calculated and are manifested in the table. The obtained data in Ivanychuk's subcorpus and those from the subcorpus of Ukrainian prose fiction are compared and presented in the table on the slide. The frequency of the parts of speech in Ivanychuk text corpus correlates with the data retrieved in Ukrainian prose fiction text corpus. However, the frequency of nouns in Ivanychuk text corpus is higher by 5%, prepositions is by 11%, and then in Ukrainian prose fiction text corpus, in contrast to the frequency of adverbs, which is higher by 20%. The study of Ivanychuk's idiolect at the morphological level presents morphological statistical characteristics such as the index of actization, the index of verbal definitions, the level of nominalization. The data in this table indicates that the number of adjectives per noun in Ivanychuk text corpus is higher than in Ukrainian prose fiction text corpus. The ratio of adverbs to verbs demonstrates higher number of verb collocation in Ivanychuk text corpus than Ukrainian prose fiction text corpus. These data serve as an idiolect peculiarity. In this study, the statistical parameters of author's vocabulary and text are the following: text size, size of vocabulary of lexemes, diversity index, average word frequency in the text, hapax legomena, exclusivity index of vocabulary, exclusivity index of text, concentration index of vocabulary, concentration index of text. The novel Voghneni Stupi comprises the highest rate of text size, the largest vocabulary of lexemes, the highest rate of hapax legomena, the highest rate of concentration index of vocabulary, meanwhile the novel Я ще написав про Донбас holds the lowest indicator of text size, the smallest vocabulary of lexemes, the lowest rate of hapax legomena, the lowest rate of concentration index of vocabulary. Although in the novel Я ще написав про Донбас there is the highest rate of diversity index, the highest rate of exclusivity index of vocabulary, as compared with the novel Voghneni Stupi, where there are the lowest indexes of diversity and vocabulary exclusivity. In Ivanychuk text corpus, concentration index of vocabulary is the opposite of exclusivity index of vocabulary that in its turn explains the Zipf's law. In Ivanychuk's text, hapax legomena involve 16,540 words, exclusive vocabulary 33%, predominates high frequency vocabulary 28% in the author's lexicon. This data indicates the diversity and the richness of Ivanychuk's vocabulary. The part of high frequency vocabulary is much higher in Ukrainian prose fiction text corpus because its size is 62 times bigger and diversity index is 10 times lower than in Ivanychuk text corpus, which explains the outweigh law. The relative small number of high frequency vocabulary, low consultation index accordingly, and a relatively large number of words with frequency 1, therefore high index of exclusivity, indicate a great diversity of vocabulary in Roman Ivanychuk's text. Frequency ranking of vocabulary provides information about the core and periphery of writers' dictionaries. Frequency rank patterns represent the text structure and are interpreted as manifestation of individual preference of linguistic personality in the choice of use of certain lexical units. The vocabulary of Ivanychuk's text and Ukrainian prose fiction text is divided into 4 zones according to the interval of ranks. The first zone in Roman Ivanychuk's text corpus, 76%, is the most consistent in terms of contentious words. Hapas legomena cover 33%. The author's vocabulary. This data manifests the uniqueness of the author's idiolect. The second zone includes the largest number of general words. The third, words specific to literary style. The first zone consists of official and informative general words which serve as formal markers for text attribution. Much less coverage with high-frequency vocabulary is detected in Roman Ivanychuk's text as compared to Ukrainian prose fiction text, which makes his text unique. A specific feature of frequency zone in Roman Ivanychuk text corpus is high coverage with low-frequency vocabulary and lower coverage with high-frequency vocabulary than in Ukrainian prose fiction text corpus. The statistical characteristic of text and vocabulary allow to determine the qualitative features of the writer's idiolect objectively. As a result of the research, the distribution and the frequency of parts of speech, concordance, morphological, statistical characteristic of vocabulary, statistical parameters of vocabulary and text, frequency zones of vocabulary are presented and analyzed. Obtained data on parts of speech, text structure, vocabulary, frequency zones in Roman Ivanychuk's text corpus are different from those in Ukrainian fiction prose text corpus, which in its turn demonstrates the specificity of the author's idiolect. This type of study can be used not only for idiolect investigations, but can also serve as data in other contexts, like authorship attribution, Solomiia studies, and for literature researches. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Nataliya. Okay, any questions? And what about the hapas legomena? So what are the unique words which you come across in the text, or the corpus of Ivanychuk's text? Can you provide the example? What are these words? Well, unique words.
Unique?
Yeah. Which define his style, well, maybe
okay.
words or expressions.
There are 1,600 thousand unique words with hapas legomena 1, and I remember unique collocation in Roman Ivanychuk. For example, чорнорота депутатка, чорноротий, согрішати люттю. Collocation is unique for Roman Ivanychuk's idiolect.
Thank you.
And I also have one question. Could I ask it? Nataliya, are you going to broaden your research concerning fictional heritage by Ivanychuk, for example, to research syntax, etc.?
What about syntax? Yeah?
Yeah, are you going to broaden your research concerning fictional heritage by Ivanychuk?
In the further research, I would like to take syntax, because it's very difficult. The syntax of Roman Ivanychuk is very difficult. It can be useful, for example, to take into consideration, into attention, For example, direct and indirect speech of author and of the personage in his text.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you for. Well, I don't know why there are so few people left in our meeting, but we have only 3 minutes left. Maybe we rejoin, and then we will invite Marta Karp to your presentation. So not to break your presentation.
Okay.